Coming up in this Brightline construction update, this update looks at the removal of the south end of the Palm Bay siding. The number 20 turnout that had been at the south end of the siding was located just north of the Hesse Avenue crossing in Palm Bay, Florida. We'll start with a look at the site just a few days before work began. Back in the 1970s, when the Florida East Coast Railway was removing its original double track, it left sections in place to become new passing tracks, with Palm Bay siding being one of those. As of when this was being filmed, Palm Bay siding was the last of these legacy passing tracks to remain south of Cocoa, with the others already having been incorporated into the new second main line. With the signal upgrades on the project causing the old signals to be removed as portions of the new signaling system was activated, this was also the last holdout of searchlight signals to remain on the FEC south of Jacksonville. They would fall in the coming weeks, and yes, I do have video of that happening for a future video. A new panel of track that would be placed in the eastern main line where this turnout was currently located was pre-built off to the side, on top of new track for the west main that was built off the Hesse Avenue crossing. The west track could simply be pulled into position when the time came, while the eastern panel would need to be lifted into place. Now on the morning of this turnout removal, May 27, 2023, and I arrived shortly after the demolition began. Crews were cutting the turnout into smaller pieces that the excavator could easily pull off to the side of the right-of-way to be scrapped at a later date. This was the first piece to be removed. You can see some of the crew members cutting up the next pieces here. This is a fairly lengthy video, even being slightly sped up, as I try to show the full process of the turnout being removed and new track panels installed. With the first piece out of the way, the excavator began working to remove the next piece. And here's a view of the demolition from between the searchlight signals. A view I will show multiple times throughout the day as the reason for their existence disappears. They would remain in place and powered on until the signal cut over in this area the next week, but would not have any practical purpose. With the second piece out of the way, crews were finishing cutting out the next piece on the north end, so the excavator went to remove a piece on the south end. The next piece on the north was ready to be removed then. They stacked this piece on top of another one. At this point, a dozer began working on the south end to remove all the old ballast down to the hard pan, from which the new track would be placed and built up on fresh ballast. They finished the track demolition with a couple of smaller pieces. While this turnout removal work was going on, a separate cut and throw was being completed just south of here at Turkey Creek. I was also documenting that work for this day, which you can see in the video linked to above. With the track removed, the excavator started doing some of the excavation work here on the north end next to the new panels. They are removing somewhere between 8 inches and a foot of old ballast. This was just being pushed off to the side for the time being, and could be dealt with later on after the eastern main line was restored for service. I left at this point to go check on the work at Turkey Creek, and when I got back, the roadbed was complete and had been rolled. Crews were preparing to move the track panel for the eastern main into place. And here's the panel beginning to be moved into place. Due to its enormous length and weight, this was done in multiple moves. Here, the loaders moved to the north end to make the initial shift at that end of the panel. After the crew members hooked up the chains, the shift began. New ties had been placed at the end where it would join into the existing track. And here's the next shift on the south side. And here's the final major move. The rails on the track panel were purposely built long, so there would be enough extra, so the joints to the existing track could be staggered. One last minor move was made in the center, to remove the slight bow. Crews then began some smaller shifts to straighten it out. It just needs to be close, as the tamper will shift it to its final alignment once ballast is on the track. Here, crews are making the joints on the north end. Here's a tamper passing through so that work train AFW1 can come in behind it. And here's AFW1 arriving after it had dropped ballast at Turkey Creek. This was one of the last times on the project that ballast would be dropped on skeletonized track. And here's GP40-2 429 passing by the searchlights. To get enough ballast, the train would need to make 2 passes, with the tamper and regulator working in between to get the first lift on the track. Here's AFW1 backing up so that could be done. Once it was out of the way, the excavator began with a rough spreading of the ballast to speed things up, while the loader began aligning the west track. The west track wouldn't be in service for over a week, so there was no big rush unlike the east main, which needed to be ready for regular freight service in a few hours. Here are 2 surfacing sets waiting just north of here, ready to get to work. And here's the tamper at work, while crews began making the joints on the west track. All of these joints will eventually be welded as part of the de-stressing process. And finally, a quick look at the completed track as the surfacing equipment prepared to move away so the first freight could pass. The surfacing equipment and AFW1 would come back again the next day to do a touch-up before the track is cleared for regular speeds. A signal crew was wrapping up the day's work, hooking the signal wires up to the new track panel. To finish off, here's a quick flight north to Tibbetts Lumber, which is something I haven't shown before. The new turnout for this industry was one of the first things installed on the project before I seriously began documenting the project. There is a D-rail sitting in the grass that still needs to be installed as well. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the like button and subscribe. Also check out my social media pages.